Hey everybody, this is Dr. Maples. Today I want to talk about dropping and adding classes in your first week of the semester. Cool thing with college is that your first week of classes, universities generally will let you drop and add classes without penalty or cost. Gives you a chance to get the schedule you want, the professors you want, and make sure the classes you're taking are meaningful and count towards something. But as an advisor, I know this also gives you a chance to feel out those classes and make sure that they are a logical fit for your time at college. Now, I want to give you 4 reasons why you may strongly want to consider dropping out of a class and taking something else that first week. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's get started. All right, folks, today we're talking about dropping and adding classes in the first week of the semester. Now, like I said, universities and colleges generally will let you drop and add classes as needed during the first week. Usually, right as the first weekend of the semester comes up is where the deadline for that stops, and you will want to double check with your college or university on their drop deadlines. But it'll clearly say when you can stop dropping and adding classes in the first week. Now, after that, you can still withdraw from classes, but it comes up as a W on your transcript. And if you're interested in that, I've got a video up on our page and you can check that out. Now, another thing to consider too is that this is a great time for you to drop classes that maybe aren't useful, but to add something else that would be. This also gives you a chance to chat with your advisor and find classes that are going to help you graduate a little bit quicker. So those couple of things out of the way, I want to start digging into some specific reasons why you may want to drop a class that very first day or even in the first week. Let's chat more. I want to give you one of the deep dark secrets of the academy. Make sure your professor's not in the room because they're going to get mad at me for this. Here's the thing. If you're a first year student, you don't actually have a person advising you and building your schedule most of the time. Especially at big universities, they will automatically put you into a schedule. The person's doing this, they don't necessarily look at your transcript, they don't necessarily ask you about your testing scores or what you want to take, they just build a schedule for you. Now, in some cases, this is fine. They're putting you in the right math class, they're putting you in the right English class, maybe filling another gen ed. But the thing is every once in a while, I've seen cases where professors put students in classes just because they were available or because their department is trying to fill up a class. And that's not a good reason for a student to take a class. So every semester, whether you're building your schedule or someone else's, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, how does every one of the classes I'm enrolled in somehow move my degree closer to completion other than just its hours that are counting towards your degree? I want to make sure, especially early on, that everything you take applies to your gen ed requirements, it applies to your major or your minor, or it maybe fulfills some kind of job skill or something that's just a personal interest, like you want to take an underwater basket weaving class. That's not a real class, by the way. You want to make sure, though, everything counts towards something. And I'm going to be honest, especially those first 2 semesters, if a class has no purpose and you're not interested in it, why are you taking it? If it's not fulfilling a requirement and you're not personally invested in this class or looking for a job skill in that class, there's no reason to take it. Instead, drop that class and take something else. Now, when you're getting like junior and senior and you're just trying to eat up hours, that might be a reason that you take a class. So you're just like, yeah, it's a 100 level class and it fits my schedule. It's fine. I'll just take this. That's perfectly fine then. But early on, we want to make sure everything is counting. And even at that point, maybe you should check out my video on if adding a minor is a good decision, because maybe adding a minor might be a good choice here instead of just wasting those hours. Nonetheless, if the class doesn't serve a purpose, drop it and take something else. Let's see what other useful advice I might have from my decade of advising. So next, I want to share an experience that I had as a student that also matches up with an experience one of my students recently had. In both cases, we walked into that class that was a 100 level class, and we were told by the professor that we were going to have to do something like 15 hours a week of work just to pass the class. That's not usual. In fact, generally most universities say that for every course hour that you take, you're generally going to spend 2 to 3 hours of time outside of class. That means a normal 3-hour course is going to take like 9 hours of your week. And that's an if. It's probably going to be like 6 to 9. So when we have a student that's being told right away that it's going to take 15 hours to pass a 100 level class, my spidey sense is a tingling. And that tells me that there's something happening here that is a problem. There are faculty that build 100 and 200 level classes that are just extraordinarily too much material. And in this situation, that's exactly what was happening. It was a class that has too much stuff in it for the kind of class that's being offered. It should be an upper division class, like a 300 or 400 level. And maybe then in some majors that would make sense, but not as a gen ed class. As such, my advice to this student was, well, there's 16 other classes that you can take to fulfill that requirement. Let's put you in one of those that's going to have a more reasonable workload. That's what we did. We're moving into the semester and things are going smoothly. You know, if you have that issue that first day of class, that to me is a really big alarm bell. Find a class that's still going to fulfill that requirement for you. Or you can also look at just taking this class with someone else. Or if it's a required class for your major and you know it's just going to take a lot of work, maybe save it for a time where you have an easier semester. Maybe you're taking 12 hours instead of 15 hours that semester. But plan that into the system if you have to take it. Otherwise, look for something else. You want some more advice? Here's another one that's going to get the universities mad at me. I'm sorry. It's true. There are just some situations where professors and students are not going to get along and they're not a good pairing. I can only think of a handful of cases where I've had students say, I appreciate you, Dr. Maples, but you're not the professor for me. We are not going to get along. And you know what? It's not personal, and I applaud that. If we're not going to work well together and you can take a different professor, I totally support that. In fact, when I have students come in during that first week and they tell me, you know, hey, I took this class and this professor just does not seem like we're going to be getting along, looking for another class may be the right situation. You're going to know this too within the first day or two of class. It's going to be immediately obvious that there's a disconnect there. And if you see it, trust your gut. Your gut is almost always going to be right on these situations. If you don't feel like it's the right pairing, look for another professor, look for another class, or even talk to your advisor and see what options you might have. But trust your gut on this one. Hey, before we go to this next point, you probably know what I'm going to say, but could you like and subscribe the channel and maybe share this video with your friends? Go ahead and text it to them right now. Let them know what Dr. Maples is up to. You know, my college experience was pretty rough. So what I want to do now as a professor is take everything that I've learned and make your college experience just a little bit easier. If you could support me for that, I sure would appreciate it. All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming. I might as well title this video, Things the University Doesn't Want Me to Tell You About Advising. So here's another one. Have you seen that website, ratemyprofessors.com? You probably haven't. You know, 5-6 years ago, this website was very popular. The design of it, it's a little sketchy and it's a little ad prone, but basically it's a place where students go in and provide public feedback on their professors. You know, sometimes it's wrong. I get it. There's in fact some evaluations of people I know where I'm like, yeah, that's not fair. This was that one student that was angry. But honestly, as a professor, I've read through a lot of the colleagues that I know and people that I've even had as professors, and I see the comments and I'm like, yeah, that's them to a T. In fact, I feel like a lot of the feedback on Rate My Professors, other than that one angry student that you see now and then, is pretty accurate. I'm not giving a plug and I'm not getting paid by this website, but it's a useful resource nonetheless, and I suggest it to my advisees. In fact, it's really good to look through there because you can kind of see some of the big problems. When you hear that professors are unavailable, they don't seem to care, that their lectures are kind of opinion-based, they don't give feedback, the test isn't over what you learn in the class, the professor misses classes or shows up late without telling folks. These are red flags. And these are things as a professor, if I knew a professor were doing that, I wouldn't advise you to take their class. So take advantage of Rate My Professors. You know, sometimes you read it with a grain of salt and realize that there's just an angry student in there that doesn't like me. In fact, I even had a couple of them. But generally speaking, you're going to get to see some great feedback on those faculty and know if it's a good fit for you. This is also something, too, that you can do in advance of the semester. But if you didn't do your research, you might as well do it during that first week and figure out if you need to get out of that class. So there we have it, folks, my 4 reasons I tell my students to drop a class and take something else in that first week. 10 years of advising will not steer you wrong. These are 4 great reasons to consider a different class. If you need advice on that, feel free to chat with your advisor. Leave comments below. And hey, if you like my t-shirt, you're into pro wrestling too, go check out Danhausen. I'll even put a link below. He's my favorite wrestler. All right, that's all for today, folks. We'll see you next time. Take care.